seated at the Creating a Postpartum Game Plan. Just make sure everybody's in the right area. So a few notes before we begin. Please turn off your cell phones, or if you have children in childcare, set them to silent, please. This session is being recorded. So we will have our speaker be speaking into the microphone. I'll be speaking into the microphone, but then at the end, if anyone has any questions, I'll be handing the microphone to you guys as well, but you'll have to stand up and come down into the middle area, okay? Please notify me before we begin if you do not agree to the media release that was made available at the front entrance. Anybody? Okay. Should your child become noisy during the session, we ask that you take them out into the atrium. Thank you so much. And I would like to introduce our speaker today. Her name is Keeley Bruner. Woohoo! Oh, sorry. Keeley is the mother of 3, having completed her most recent 4th trimester after giving birth last spring. She is inspired by the 4th trimester, Arizona's mission of supporting, empowering, connecting, and advocating for postpartum mothers and families. She believes that the postpartum can be singularly beautiful and singularly isolating, often in one's hour's time. Because it is important for families to foster the mother's health as much as the baby's due to the many physical and emotional dynamics at play during the recovery from pregnancy and birth. Keeley is now humbly grateful for the opportunity to serve as a resource through the 4th Trimester Arizona Conference. Keeley enjoys napping and ice cream in her free time. I totally agree. And thank you so much for being here today, Keeley.
Thank you all. I'm really happy to be here. I feel a little bit of an outlier today because I'm not really an expert of any sort. It's just what's worked for me, and I am hopeful that this will also be useful for some of you guys. He's hopeful as well. And so I do have a plan for if he gets too loud, so don't fear. I would like to begin with my postpartum experience, my first one. I'm sure that a lot of us here have already had postpartum experiences. I have it written down here because I don't want to go off the rails and talk for an hour and a half about it, so I'm going to just write and read what I've written here. What the goals of this session are basically to give a little bit of my experience. Also, I want to, talk about some of the necessity of recovery and rest during postpartum. I think if you're here, you probably are on that page as well, but just want to kind of touch on that. And then we will just go ahead and get into coming up with a rudimentary plan for kind of utilizing your village in whatever way that looks like for you. So, postpartum is a unique time of life, no doubt about it. Before giving birth, I had read a few different books on the process of pregnancy and labor. I completed a daily journal comprised of weight and measurement records, cravings and moods, and read compulsively about the daily development of my fetus. I read dozens of childbirth stories and strategies, even holding ice cubes in my hand to practice withstanding pain. And here's where all women who have given birth guffaw. My husband and I had attended a yoga-based childbirth relaxation technique class, which actually did come in handy, but that's where my preparation had stopped. It was as though I expected the baby to come out sleeping through the night and potty trained. I had made... right. I had made a family photo album with messages of love from all our relatives for Little Bear. That's what I called her. I had prepared a handmade book of lullabies to sing. I had seriously considered cognitively what it meant to be birthing a member of the human race and ways that I would do my best to raise a kind, intelligent citizen of the world. What I didn't give a lot of thought to were the material logistics of wiping a bottom and hammering out a sleep schedule. Of course, I had all the implements, the diapers, the onesies, the creams and lotions. So in a sense, I was prepared, but I had not thought about practicalities in any kind of detail, figuring, I suppose, that all of that would come naturally. It's possible that it happens that way for some women. it did not for me. Breastfeeding was mercifully a relatively easy transition. However, I do remember the third day of Julia's life, wherein we woke her repeatedly to feed, and my mother diligently made my nipple into a sandwich shape over and over and over again. I remember the time Julia spent 20 minutes suckling, only to find that she'd created an enormous hickey on the upper part of my breast, as though she were tunneling an alternate route to my mammary glands. All that to say, it wasn't the magnetic attraction that I had hoped for and anticipated as well. She was not what I had anticipated. I had gotten used to this silent, occasionally moving little human inside me, and now I had a wailing, flailing, pooping mess that I was expected to feed and clean and somehow get to sleep on her own. I appreciated the advice of others on schedules or napping techniques, but wondered if there might be another way. Being urged by everyone to listen to my instincts only made me feel incapable because I had no instincts to listen to. As the days and weeks passed, I found them. I learned so much every day about what Julia made her happy and restful and what made us both crazy. So it was that the goals of sleeping apart from her and feeding gave way to those instincts as I learned and discovered them and made adjustments accordingly. Maybe your postpartum experience was or will be similar, maybe not. But my personal feeling is it's one of those instances where an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. I learned from my postpartum so that with my second and third babies, I had a better idea of what to expect, both of myself and of them. I realized, too, that I couldn't expect those around me to automatically know what I needed or how best to care for me during this precious time. By taking a few minutes to think about what you envision as an ideal experience, what you envision it looking like, you can better communicate that vision to those who love you and are there to support you. And you can maybe even shore up resources to better help that vision be your lived experience. Now, I'm going to move on to the rest and recovery portion, and this is not going to be a whole long time because I do want us to have time to plan with the handout I brought. Undoubtedly, some things are hard to prepare for. In situations where you have a child with special needs, or a short or non-existent maternity or paternity leave, or an extended hospital stay, it can feel like planning for postpartum is a bit of a luxury. Personally, I submit that those are situations in which 10 to 15 minutes of planning and dreaming can especially come in handy. Even in an ideal birth, postpartum bleeding can last up to 6 weeks. And the more children a woman has, the longer that will likely take to taper off. Our bodies are recovering not only from birth, but also, the 9 to 10 months of pregnancy prior to that experience. The wound left by the attachment of the placenta into our body is approximately 8.5 inches across, the same width as a standard-sized dinner plate. Due to the body's healing and restructuring, it might be difficult to breathe, walk, void, and do any number of things. So rest and recovery during this time is not a luxury. Heaven knows you'll need to be on the go soon enough and with no foreseeable significant reprieve. The fourth trimester is a special time. You can build on the relationship with your baby if birth was good, maybe pick up some pieces if it didn't go like you hoped. Planning for postpartum is like giving your future self a big hug. And I thought of that myself. There is a saying that goes, undoubtedly this is before current insurance costs and societal expectations and maternity leave policies, 1 week in the bed, 1 week around the bed, and 2 weeks around the house. Many cultures continue to practice lying in, a period in which the new mother does little besides rest, recover, and care for the baby for 3 to 6 weeks following the birth. While postpartum disorders are not necessarily new, only more recognized these days, there is a strong correlation between getting appropriate sleep and support during the postpartum period and making that transition well. Our mothers and grandmothers may not have specifically planned for this time, but because so many of us have moved away from our families, and number 2, we're completely new to the task of motherhood, and number 3, we're used to feeling competent in school and or work, so that we approach motherhood or parenthood as though, it's a job, or it's a degree. It's something we have impossible expectations for ourselves and our babies. And it's all the more important for us to be realistic in what we, expect from the postpartum period. One suggestion might be for you to talk, if it's your first, postpartum, maybe talk with other mothers. Maybe get, a little bit of basic task, baby care, if you're anxious about changing diapers or feeding. Watch a friend or relative nurse her baby if you're wondered about latching, breastfeeding, what it looks like. Even with a teeny bit of experience under your belt, you'll feel like the transition is easier. And you might also consider hiring a postpartum doula to help empower your family's strength, transition with strength, peace, and wisdom, to include new members. They can be profoundly helpful in freeing mothers up to rest and recover and focus their attentions on the new babies, as well as listening and referring additional resources when necessary. Now, I'm going to go ahead and just move on to the planning. I wanted to let you know that in this handout, I included my personal postpartum plan for my third, and it might be the type of thing that looks like it could work for you. It might not. But I'm just going to go ahead and say what we always said at La Leche League, which was take what works for you and leave the rest. So I'm going to go ahead and hand these out. Thank you so much, Katrina. And when you get that, you're welcome to scan the whole thing. But what I'd really love to do is work through this thing together, because I could give it to you and tell you to do it in 10 or 15 minutes of free time, and we're going to laugh because that's not going to happen. How many of us have had a baby before? Okay. And how many of us are expecting right now? Okay. Who's expecting that's already had a baby? Okay. Who's expecting that hadn't had a baby? Okay. How many of us do we have that's got 2 kids or more? 3 kids or more? All right. Excellent. So, I'm going to go ahead and hand this little noisemaker off, because I think that would be a little bit easier for folks to hear me. Sorry, baby. That was my last trick, was the nursing in the carrier. Okay. Now, so a lot of this is pretty straightforward, but I would like to write some thought. My idea is that I can write some thoughts down, and then you guys can take a picture of this later, so don't feel like you have to, drink from the fire hose or whatever. All right. So, how do you picture the postpartum period? And I really do want you guys to, if you can, do this. Close your eyes and imagine your perfect setting. Is it quiet and limited to you and your baby? Is there noise and bustle and life happening around you? Are there a lot of family members? Well, they're going to take pictures of it at the end. I have got lots of words. All right. Are you in a secluded bedroom or more of a common living space? What does it look like, sound like, smell like? Are there candles or aromatherapy? Katrina, may I have you just hold this maybe? Oh, we said we were going to set this. That's not going to. Yeah. I'm not sure. That's not close enough, is it?
Or do you want me to hold this for you? Are you okay with me writing?
That's fine.
Okay.
I'll just say it loudly, like the word that I highlighted. Okay, good. Aromatherapy. Okay. Flowers. Sunlight. Are you near a TV? Consider the idea of a postpartum sanctuary. Is this appealing? That's it for now. Does it make you feel relaxed or stifled? Generally speaking, it may be a good idea to plan to have others in your family come to you rather than going to them. Many cultures set aside a specific time frame for postpartum recovery and bonding, anywhere from a few days to 6 weeks or more. Considering your practical circumstances, what seems like a reasonable time frame for your situation? I'll just share here a brief anecdote about what I did, which was with Joel, my baby that just left. We didn't have a baby shower because we already had stuff for babies. So we had a mother blessing. And in that time, we actually made bracelets, with the thread. Some of you might have been part of some sort of thing like this. It's really very meaningful. And everybody that left, we stood around, and the string was wrapped around our wrist, and then at the end, everybody left with a bracelet. And the idea was to leave it on until the baby was born or until it wore off or whatever. I made a commitment that time for myself to leave it on through the 4th trimester. That was for him and for me, so that I could keep that perspective, and have the expectation of him to be independent and, able to, sleep here and here and here and eat here and here and here and 20 minutes on this side and 20 minutes on that side. These are things that, for me, I've come to experience them to be very fluid and very much directed by instinct and by watching the baby's cues and feeling and saying, it's going to be this side, as opposed to keeping track, and some sort of, and I love apps. I'm glad that they have them, and they're super successful for a lot of folks. For me, it just needed to be a little more freewheeling because I'm not really a freewheeler. I'm doing this planning for you. And so, I think for me, that bracelet kind of allowed me to say, okay, no, I don't have to do that right now. I'm still just 3 months postpartum. I'm still just 2 months postpartum. I don't have to do that. I'm not going to try that new recipe, or I'm not going to go to that birthday party. I'm going to send Jason with the kids because I'm postpartum. And these are all really great things to allow yourself to step back from, for a period of time. And I really, benefited from it. And I think that a 3-month period is reasonable. I did go back to work, after he was a month old. It's a unique situation where he can come with me and it's part-time. But all that to say, you don't have to initially step back from everything in your life. Be very judicious about what you step back into, is all I'm saying, if there's any possible way that you can manage it, because it's going to get crazy soon. in a good way. So those are some thoughts about your postpartum kind of situation, broad strokes, your scene, and your time frame. All right, moving on to clothing and supplies. Your changing body might require some transitional clothing and or supplies. Most birth practitioners will set you up with the standard peri-rinse bottle, postpartum mesh panties, and bed pads needed in the first week or two. One thing I have found helpful is freezing pads with witch hazel. And they have recipes for that online. It's also just as easy as putting witch hazel on a pad and putting in your freezer. I make a bunch of them to help ease the transition as my body heals. There may be a few extra goodies that would be helpful to have. At the very least, underwear and or shirts you don't mind getting stained, perhaps irrevocably, by any number of body fluids. Some women have found it helpful to use incontinence underwear. I benefited from using period underwear for the first several weeks. With I use cloth pads, that's what I do, but obviously you find what works for you. You can say period underwear too. You're welcome, all of you men. For the first several weeks, another handy trick is New Mama bottom spray. That's really, it can help ease post-birth burning and discomfort. Might find it helpful to have stool softener and or hemorrhoid cream. It's going to get better. Hemorrhoid cream. Or garlic capsules, which you can just cut open and use on a makeup pad or something like makeup remover pad. you would just apply that similarly. Nursing pads, garlic, maybe. Thank you. Garlic capsules. That's great. Nursing pads can help manage leaking and facilitate easier nursing. Consider stocking up on a pair of comfy PJs or two. Maybe a robe, depending on the time of year. For me, it doesn't matter the time of year. A robe is a great thing to have. An internet search of postpartum and recovery kit can yield helpful ideas, whether this is your first birth or a subsequent one. So those are some ideas for that. For breastfeeding, if you plan to breastfeed, what are some ways to have support for that ahead of time? Have you breastfed before, or will this be your first experience? A simple Google search or walking around this courtyard here will acquaint you with several lactation resources in the area. And if you've gathered some websites or numbers ahead of time, or even made contact with one or two IBCLC's, International Board Certified Lactation Consultants, that you like, you will have an easier go of it if or when you hit a road bump. Find a local or online breastfeeding group or two that you might join. Trust me, it will feel less stressful to research ahead of time than when you are in the midst of a plug duct. Even if things go smoothly, which they absolutely may, think about what you need to develop a strong breastfeeding relationship. This may be a commitment to have plenty of water handy, plenty of protein-strong, high-energy snacks available. I list a lot of those later, so we'll leave that for now. Nipple cream, nursing bras, maybe even some special nursing tops. I have lived in mine for years, even after giving birth, especially at night that first year. They're really super helpful. You might even consider asking for a gift card to a maternity nursing clothes company as a shower gift, especially if you're expecting a subsequent child. Sometimes you have what you need for the baby, and so note to mamas who don't plan to breastfeed, this doesn't let you off the hook for getting rest. Breastfeeding actually helps stimulate contractions, which enable your uterus to get back to its normal size and promote internal healing. So whatever additional logistics or materials it may require, it is beneficial. So do plan to still get the bed rest that you need. Whether you plan to breastfeed or not, whether you do that or not, you're still going to need to get a lot of rest. So moving on to helpful habits. Consider ways that you manage stress in your everyday life. These can include things that simply bring you joy. Do you journal? Do you exercise? Go for walks? Maybe you read novels or listen to audiobooks. Or maybe you drink tea and watch Netflix to unwind. Or maybe you, like me, are a recreational napper. Oh my gosh. Try to plan time to do as many of these things for as long as possible. You have the perfect excuse. For me, I made a point to take herbal baths to help heal my perineum after my most recent birth. I knew it might be logistically tough to manage around 2 older kids and bedtimes, but it was definitely worth it to do that. Maybe just having some scented candles or flowers, we said that earlier, in your recovery space will help your mood and morale. Here's where you can really appreciate a baby break by sending your partner or another support person on a walk with the baby. Since you are resting, maybe it will be a good time to talk with friends, particularly other mothers, either in person or on the phone. Then again, you may find that you might benefit from some time offline. I'm going to let you write a little bit. Friends, mothers, mothers offline and away from the social sphere. Think about what you prefer before you default to sharing pictures on social media, like the second that your baby is born. This is a thing that I did with my third baby, and I couldn't really explain why. It was a week after he was born before I posted on Facebook that he'd been born, and because it was the International Day of the Midwife, and I was like, hey, thank you midwives, helping our babies out and everything like that. I did post it out in our family group, but I realized that what I was doing was preserving a boundary and letting people in as I wanted to let them in. With my second baby, it was like, look who's here, like the second, that she was born. And that was fine too for that time. But I think that I just thought about it a little bit more mindfully, with my third. And for me, it was the right thing to kind of let there be a little bit of space and discernment about that, rather than just kind of assuming that, this is going to be the best thing for everybody to know. Something that's pretty intimate, really, right? And so just don't, I guess my advice, and I don't know, is just kind of think about that before you go ahead and do that. Because everybody's going to say, oh, the baby, when can we see? When can we come? You want food? Maybe you want to field those requests. Maybe you don't. You know what I mean? Maybe you tell 5 people. But just beware, right? Before you just post and 600, 800,000 people kind of know this thing about you, and maybe you want them to know or not. I think I've talked about that enough. So you might look into infant massage and have a couple of moves handy to try for bonding in the first days. Consider researching home hair care, manicure, and or pedicure services if that's something would help to relax you, and home massage for you too. Another baby shower gift idea, massage gift card. Here are some basic suggestions based on postpartum research, and I have those on your handout. It's SNOWBALL. So sleep, get adequate nutrition, take omega-3s, walk. It's best to wait until your bleeding tapers a little bit. Take breaks from baby when needed, get adult time, drink plenty of liquids, and try to laugh. I think that a lot of those are going to be very important, and that's something that's you can find that online. SNOWBALL, well known. Thank you so much, Katrina, by the way. I know a lot of these things are probably givens, but they're things that I didn't think of, each time that I had a baby. So it's just nice to have kind of a comprehensive list. Yeah, you can, well, actually, so we still have more to do. So you can flip that, I think, and whatever you think is, do they stick? Oh, that's even better. Thank you. Okay, so support network, hired help. Do you have people you can call if you need a break? Like if you want an uninterrupted hour or two for napping, or maybe someone to walk the baby around the block while you take some time for yourself, some deep breaths, eat something without being needed. Maybe you take a shower. Maybe you need someone to run errands, like picking up dry cleaning or groceries, perhaps take the trash out, empty the dishwasher, just errands is fine. Maybe you need someone to take care of your older kids for an afternoon, or do school pickup. So are there a handful of people you can call or text for these types of small favors? Most people are glad to help if asked. It's hard to read a new mother's mind. The list will be helpful for you and for your partner if or when crunch time comes, but if you utilize it regularly, hopefully you can avoid crunch time. If you're uncomfortable organizing a support network, maybe designate a close friend to be the organizer or to facilitate a meal train. Remember the importance of allowing yourself to be helped. That's really, really central to this whole thing. Are there chores around the house you'd like to get done while you're recovering, but that you won't be able to do? Go ahead and write them down so you can be thinking of ways to delegate them. More importantly, go through and see if there's anything that can be left undone for a little while. This might be a good time to utilize older siblings, even little ones, by asking for their help fetching diapers, snacks, or other supplies, even if they can't take care of more important chores independently. Maybe you plan to have a house cleaner come once or a few times to keep things going. Think about ways to save trouble, like ordering groceries for pickup or delivery. You might even consider scheduling a home chef or meal kit service to help offset the burden of cooking those first couple of weeks. Maybe you go ahead and have a landscaping company to come and take care of the lawn for a few weeks while you and your partner tend to more pressing needs. these are not going to be for everybody. We didn't do all of these things, but for some people, it's like, oh my gosh, that would be super, super helpful. So maybe even just buying some of those meals they have at the grocery store, which you can just take home. And if you're like me, you've already been operating in that mode since pregnancy. So, it's pretty fresh on your mind maybe. But moving on for the food portion, it's very, very central to this, to this process of recovering, especially if this isn't your first rodeo. That meals can be tricky during those first couple of weeks after having a baby. Take a few minutes to think of your favorite restaurants for takeout or delivery, so you'll have a handy list during those times. Maybe even request gift cards from restaurants or the grocery store or whatever. As shower gifts, they will come in handy eventually. Now, you might not be able to afford takeout or delivery every night, so try and think of about 8 to 10 simple meals that someone else could easily throw together for dinner. For me, this would be things like pita pizzas, tacos, baked potato bar, breakfast for dinner. You might even be interested in stashing pre-made crock pot meals in the freezer or getting a list of Instant Pot recipes together. This will be super helpful for a partner or maybe a parent or a doula who comes to offer assistance. If you're like me, these are fresh on your mind, as I said, from pregnancy. Additionally, you might think of doing a meal train, and that's here, and you've already formatted your contact list for that, so you're good to go. Think of all your favorite foods. Now is the time to eat those soft cheeses, cured meats, sushi, what other treats you avoided during pregnancy. You may also want to have you just want to have a lot of healthy options, and I'm going to list a few things just because it's the way that I think, and it helped me. For me, this meant things like ready-made smoothies, yogurt cups or tubes, pre-cut veggies and fruit, and pre-boiled eggs on hand. Things I might not ordinarily indulge in, but that would be super handy in the midst of cluster feedings and grabbing a quick lunch. Also think about things you can eat while nursing that only require one hand and they're not hot. Especially if you plan to breastfeed, be sure to have a lot of the protein-heavy things we mentioned before. I'm just going to let you write this list because you guys, what I did was I looked at my personal postpartum plan, which is on the back of your handout. And then also, I looked at a lot of blogs about this because I thought, oh my gosh, these are all really great ideas. And so this is just going to be an overabundance of ideas, but that saves you having to read about 24 blog posts. So in moderation, a small amount of caffeine will not harm a breastfed baby. It is recommended to limit to less than 300 milligrams, like 2-3 cups a day. You might also consider having mother's milk tea and or cramp bark tincture available, as well as your prenatals. And always remember, hydrate, hydrate, hydrate. So I'm going to let you, these are some of the snacks. Perfect. Thank you so much. That's super. And then it's just this list right here. So moving on with our visitation. And I'm going to take a sip of water. Similarly to your involvement, if you're on social media, give some thought to visitation before you assume that something's going to be the best thing to do, especially if it's not your first child. Maybe you don't need your family there the instant the baby is born. Maybe you would like to have them there. That needs to be your decision. If there's any way that you can make that happen and your family be the one to kind of decide, I would advise that. My most recent postpartum, it was most useful for my mother to come out, and the baby was 3 weeks old. She missed his first 3 weeks, but that's when we needed her because that's when school ended, and she was able to pick up the kids at school and manage all of that, help my husband around the house and those sorts of things once the baby was not sleeping all the time. I guess what what I kind of want to say about that is that something our mothers and grandmothers didn't really have to think about was this issue of visitation. My family, my mom had her mother 9 miles away and knew that she'd be around to call on anytime for cooking, cleaning, childcare, or anything else. On the downside, she had her mother 9 miles away. She knew that she could call on her for cooking, shocking. You get the picture. So it's a two-edged sword, and I just want to encourage people to be mindful about, letting it be your decision, if it's at all possible, who you kind of let into that sphere in those first days. That goes for family, but also your friends, just be sure that you can spend the time that you want to with your baby in that kind of cocoon, if that's something that appeals to you. A lot of people, maybe that's not their bag. It was for me. So what happened with us was that my mom came out for 10 days or whatever. Then they took our 2 older daughters back to North Carolina. And then my husband's mom, who lives in North Carolina as well, came back with them after a week. So that was like 3-4 weeks of assistance we had. And you guys, it was awesome. So if there's any way you can stagger visits like that, or your paternity leave, maybe wait to use the paternity leave until the baby is, kind of settled in, or, not, as I say, not sleeping all the time. Those are things that you can talk about. Decide, if there is a paternity leave, which, policies are a bit abysmal in our country for those sorts of things, maternity, let alone paternity. But if you do have those sorts of logistics, kind of think about, don't just assume, hey, let's start at the minute, and just kind of take it out like that. So maybe you want to spend a little bit of time developing your family rhythm before you have visitors and guests. So I think that's pretty much what I have on visitation. It was just kind of to mention that as a consideration. I just have a little conclusion here. It may be helpful to remember a few things about the postpartum period. This is a season, so be patient. Your body has just accomplished an amazing thing. You do not need to feel lazy for resting and getting your strength back, physically, mentally, and emotionally. Caring for a newborn can be a very exhausting, but also very life-giving proposition. The less you can have on your mind besides caring for yourself and your baby, the easier the transition will be. Remember that you will have more to offer your baby, especially in the months to come, when drawing on a full well, which you can accomplish by getting adequate rest as you recover. Above all, and this is really important, acknowledge your feelings, be patient with yourself, and try to treat your postpartum body with love, care, and gratitude for all it has accomplished in recent months. And I believe that's all I really have. I wanted to give you guys some time, to write and come up with a plan if that's something that you want to do. If anybody has any suggestions, I'm happy to, hand out the microphone. We are filming, so it's easier to have, Thank you. Do you want to grab one of those?
Do you want to grab another one?
Do you want me to stand here? Where do you want me to go?
You're on.
I'm on? Okay, I just wanted to say in regards to the nutrition, for anybody who is expecting right now, I was really paranoid about it when I was pregnant. I was super freaked out about how to get food, and I didn't want to be spending a ton of money on getting takeout and eating out every day. So we found this thing called Dream Dinners. Has anybody heard of it? Yeah. So we have been doing it for over a year now. My daughter just turned a year old. We signed up when I was 8 months pregnant, and there's a lot of locations in the valley, but basically you can go and prep these meals, these home cooked meals that you can then take home. You get a month's supply of food, and they're frozen. So you just keep them in a deep freezer or in your freezer at home, and then you can just defrost them and prepare them as needed. And they're, all real ingredients. So it's not preservatives or anything like that. But we did it when I was pregnant, and you can even pay, I think it's $20 extra, but then they prepare it for you. So if you're, that first month or two after you have a baby, you don't want to go out of the house and do that, or you don't have somebody that can do it for you, you can just pay, and then it's all taken care of. But that was so helpful for my family, because then it's we just always knew we had those meals, and you didn't have to worry about spending a bunch of money, getting takeout or anything like that. So if you are expecting, I would suggest checking it out. They have, I think, like a few different locations around Phoenix. So Dream Dinners.
It sounds incredible.
Yeah.
I love it. You said Dream Dinners, right? Dream Dinners.
Well, I think it depends.
She's wondering about price.
Yeah, so I think you can do it like different. Each meal costs different amounts. So like we usually, on average, we still do it. We spend probably about $200 a month on it, but it gives us, we probably do it at least 3 nights a week. And so when we looked at how much we're actually spending every time we go out to eat, just for 2 people, you know, it's like we end up spending at least $30, if not more. So we realized we were saving a lot of money by doing it and then like prepping it at home. But you can also, like, I think you can make it more budget friendly if you need to, or you can spend more than that. You can pick how many meals you want to do, but it's pretty like doable. And I think for me, it was more about, I didn't want to end up like having to go buy, you know, a $15 entree at a restaurant every time I got takeout type of thing. So
Plus,
yeah.
And this is really good. Thank you so much for that suggestion. That's super. Because you have to think about the delivery fees and stuff like that. For DoorDash and Grubhub, and before long, it's, you know, it's more than you wanted to spend. So Dream Dinners, that's a good thought. One thing that I did, as I said, I think with crockpot meals, you know, I prepped a whole bunch of them. You can find, if you Google, you can find a whole lot of good recipes, which are gonna keep in your freezer. They're gonna be very easy. I'm not gonna lie. With my 3rd baby just now, I just bought a bunch of Stouffer's. I sure did, but you know, I mean, they got us through in those times where I just didn't really feel like cooking at all. So, you know, and I mean, it's decent. So I think just kind of any way you can find it to make it easier. Yes, ma'am.
I'm a postpartum doula, and so one of the things that I talk to the families about is getting, if you're going to have meal train, to get a cooler, you know, with lots and lots of ice outside your door, especially in Arizona, so that you don't have to entertain people. If you don't have somebody in your home to be the gatekeeper and tell them that it's time to go, because they all want to come over and hold the baby and kiss the baby. And my job being to take care of mom, I see how hard that is on mom, because she doesn't want to be entertaining everybody that stops by. And the doctor's office has one of those great little things that you stick on the door that says, shh, the baby's sleeping. So stick it on the door all the time. Yeah, all the time. And I do think also meal train, you can kind of change that around and make sure that when, and this is another thing I suggest to people, when people call and say, hey, can I come meet the baby? When you call them back, go, yeah, can you please stop at Walgreens and get me some witch hazel? You know, give everybody a job, because we want to feel like we're helping you as individuals and as friends, but that helps you. So it goes both ways, even if it's just one thing. I think it's really helpful. Oh, and I'm a great, what do you call it, shower gift.
Postpartum doula, sexy.
But I'm a great shower gift. Get a gift certificate for a postpartum doula for a couple hours. You know, people are starting to think more and more about the 4th trimester. That's why I came up here from Tucson this morning, because we plan so much for the birth, which I think is a really important thing. But then we forget about the marriage. We forget about the baby. You know, you plan for the wedding. So, you know, and you had your blessing, same thing. You can have a blessing and you can have a whole bunch of gift certificates, and each one of your friends can come. What's it, the 7 sisters?
So that, yep, thank you so much. That's a really, really good tip. Yeah, having a cooler, being, you know, as I said earlier, that idea of being judicious about who you kind of invite into the new makeup of your family. On the second page of the handout, there are a couple of things which I just thought would be useful. Okay, for you guys, which includes a number of books, and one of them is 7 Sisters for 7 Days. I haven't read that, but there are several. Yeah, I've read a couple things along these lines, and I think that all of those are highly recommended. You know, and yeah. Okay, I think there. That one's there too, so that's good. And then I know that I mentioned a whole lot of things which you can ask for as gifts, and so there's a comprehensive list there. And if you're interested in looking at more options, you can Google certainly and find lots of other ideas. Is there any other? Yes.
I was thinking about babies that are born in the winter or during flu season, and people are worried about the coronavirus, and having people in your homes that you don't know, what's happening or what they've been exposed to. They have little signs that you can put on their car seats and that say, "Please don't touch. Your germs are too strong for me," or you can look but not touch, and you shouldn't be ashamed to have those with you. Am I kidding? Have those things with you, just so your baby isn't exposed to things that they're not supposed to.
Yeah. 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 No, it's true. There's so many things circulating. So it's good. Again, that's part of keeping that boundary. And I think that's something I'm hearing from a lot of people. It's important to sort of draw those and keep them. Thank you guys so much for, just right quick.
To build on what you said about building a wall, make sure that you discuss all this with your husband, partner, significant other, whoever, because if you're not on the same page in the hymn book, so to speak, you're working alone. It's important that if your partner is going to be the gatekeeper, he or she needs to know that ahead of time. If that's going to be their responsibility, they need to have thought about how to tell grandma it's time to go.
Good. And that goes to our theme of communication too.
And I would say, because I'm a nurse and I work with postpartum moms as well, and not only about the husband being the gatekeeper, but if you have a husband who's not the gatekeeper, then you need to find one. So find a friend that's going to be strong enough to say no to the rest of your family and his family.
Very good. Thank you so much. And so just to tie in with our conference theme, the whole point of this is for you to know sort of what you're thinking about, what you're planning, and then so you can communicate to those who love you and want to care for you. So if you find it a useful tool, which I hope you do, share it with those who are important to you. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.